We're on episode 2 of Diversity by the Dozen. I'm joined with Leda, who is the former CEO of 11FS Boundary, who are a digital kind of financial services consultancy. If you haven't read it already, she releases kind of an insight every Thursday on her Leda White's blog. One of my favorites. Go check it out if you haven't. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And thank you for being so patient with me while we're trying to find the time to do this.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So obviously, before we dive in, I'm sure everyone watching or listening kind of would love to learn a little bit more about you, if they don't know you already. Can you give us like an overview, basically, of where you've got to so far? Obviously, you did your PhD in politics, and now you're in financial tech. So it's a bit of
It's
a
not the
journey.
easiest transition, is it?
Yeah.
I am what you would call an accidental banker.
Okay.
Because as you say, I did a PhD in politics on the rise of political Islam in Turkey specifically. And I found myself, because of personal circumstances, I had a series of deaths in the family. I had to get a job before I was finished writing because while I was busy mourning, my scholarship ran out. It's
Oh
very
no.
practical consideration. There was no grand plan. And I ended up getting a job in a company that was mostly doing sort of private security and risk
Okay.
analytics. So nothing to do with what I do now, but they were investing in non-weapons defense technology software solutions. And I
Okay.
remember sitting there going, none of this makes sense to me. M&A work, never done this before. Technology, never touched
Yeah.
it before. I was a bit of a technophobe when I was at
Oh, no.
university. It was all very, very new. And I do remember saying to a friend at the time, there's some parts of this job I love and some parts that are just not for me.
Really?
But I'm not
Okay.
entirely sure what to do with this because I've already jumped from academia into this thing. Like, what do I do now? And my friend said, well, look, we've built a system and we don't like humans. Do you want to come and work with us? And I was like, oh, what does the system do? And he described it. And I was like, I don't understand any of that. And he said, well, it's for banks. And I was like, oh, how hard can it be? And that's how I
How you
got
got into
no,
it?
the absolute audacity of no information. Because the reality is, it was actually pretty hard, but you
Really?
can learn it.
Okay.
So I ended up working with a bunch of friends in a very, very small startup before fintech was a thing, selling solutions into, at the time, Deutsche Bank, who ended up actually buying the solution, and most of the team
Right.
stayed on. I went from there to BNY Mellon, where as I was interviewing, the guy who later became my boss said, is there anything you want to tell me? I said, yes, I don't know anything about banking or technology. I've been faking it for the last couple of years. And he, bless him, laughed out loud and then said, well, look, most people are faking it. But if you join us here with an
We'll teach
operations
you.
in IT, you're going to learn it.
Okay.
And if you learn it, you can fix it because it's going to be broken. It's like, okay. And he was
Okay.
right, because actually going in, not having to pretend I knew, and
Yeah.
spending that time actually doing the hands-on work was invaluable. And then from there, I moved into client-facing technology and innovation, moved
Mm.
to the Middle East to serve as a chief innovation officer for Qatar National Bank, which is the biggest bank in Middle East and Africa. And then came back to Europe to join the 11FS team to build a joint venture between 11FS and DNB, the Norwegian bank, which was
Okay.
a cloud native core banking system. So I was still on the software side rather than the consulting side.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been a fascinating journey. But as I said, it's been entirely accidental. And whenever I give
Okay.
careers talks, it's like it's all
I
been
don't
an
know.
I can't help you. It's all been an accident. Well, my advice is be open to serendipity.
Okay. So be open to kind of whatever it throws at you and just kind of
Exactly. Yes.
go in head first. So obviously that's kind of a bit of a crazy journey. Like, was there ever like kind of a time where you considered just giving up, or like especially after some objections as being one a female in those kind of industries?
Yeah. So there have been a couple of times when, I mean, I didn't consider giving up because I have nothing to fall back on. I don't
Okay.
come from money. I don't work, I don't eat, kind of thing, right? So I didn't have the option um,
Mm.
of giving up. But there have been times when it felt like it wasn't going anywhere, like I was
Okay.
spinning my wheels. I have had times of feeling absolutely trapped, I guess is the right word.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think, and it sounds possibly a little dramatic, but I'm sure we all have experienced those times in our careers where you're not far enough in your career to be able to definitely articulate all your skill sets. There's more you don't know
than you do.
than you do know. So you don't necessarily see if your boss or mentor doesn't come to rescue you from whatever is making you unhappy in your job, you don't necessarily know how to tell the story of what it is that makes you worthy of an opportunity somewhere else. I think women suffer from that a little bit more, but I actually think anyone who spends a long time in a corporate environment, you have really considerable blind spots, because you usually can see how people make it inside your organization, but you don't necessarily know where to begin making that transition. So I think there's definitely there's an element of that. To the second part of your question, I have definitely experienced those sort of microaggressions or major aggressions of being a woman in the workplace. It pains me that it's still relevant, to be honest with you. The things that were happening 10, 15 years ago are, to a certain extent, still happening.
Yeah.
The experience has varied by context. But,
Okay.
so I've had some pretty bad experiences in an organization that dealt with it okay. And I've had pretty bad experiences in organizations that dealt with it really badly.
Really? Okay.
And the organizations that were dealt with it really badly, I will be honest, that's not why I left, but it was definitely a factor.
Of course. And I think you mentioned this on your blog, like about obviously you go to HR or whoever it may be with these problems that you're facing, and sometimes they're just giving the best advice that they can, but there's not necessarily the kind
I
of
mean,
foundations there to.
that's right. And I do remember the organization that dealt with it okay, actually. So this is the process, this is what's going to happen. But off the record, they said, we've had a lot of rumors that this is not the first time, but you're the first person who actually is making a formal complaint.
Okay.
It will be your word against his, and he's been here 28 years, and it might get ugly.
Yeah.
You want to do this to yourself. And you know what? It was
Crazy.
it was, from a human perspective, though, it was absolutely the right thing to actually say, you're doing the right thing, but it's going to suck. Are you ready for this?
And did you go ahead with it? I take it you did.
I did. And absolutely nothing happened.
Oh.
And I will say that consistently in every single organization I've worked in of any size, where there have been issues and I've raised them, because I've raised them every time,
As you
absolutely
should.
zero was done in every single one of those organizations. It was put on people's files.
Really? But
Really,
no action.
absolutely no action. And let me also say that the place where I have had zero problems, zero sexism, zero microaggressions was the Middle East.
Really? Which you'd expect to be the
Expect, is it?
opposite with cultural differences and things like that. You'd maybe kind of expect it to be a little bit different than the UK. But it's crazy, isn't it? Because if it's happening to you, it's happening to 10, 20, 30 other women who are all in the same position, and kind of everyone is just kind of getting swept under the rug a little bit, and we're allowing kind of this to continue happening, which obviously it shouldn't be. If it was an issue 10 years ago, it still shouldn't be an issue now, and it just
Yeah.
seems like maybe we haven't progressed a little bit in that sense.
I think we have progressed in a variety of ways,
Yeah.
not all of them good. So I would say one of the ways in which we've progressed is that people have the right language now to neutralize behaviors. When something happens, people have the right language to sort of neutralize it and contextualize it, which is terrible. But things have also changed in good ways. I think there's much more representation, even though the sort of presence of women in boards and C-level positions in FTSE 100 and 500 companies has gone down, actually.
Really?
From 2018 to 2019. It has absolutely miserably gone down. And in fact,
I didn't realize that.
I will find the reference and share it with you, because it is quite heartbreaking. It's not a happy, but I do think sort of Yes, Fortune 500 CEO, 2017, 32 women, 2018, 24 women. That's
Okay.
from Pew Research Center.
Which is quite a big drop in
Yeah,
a short amount of time, really.
yeah.
Which is
Right.
not good enough.
No, it's not good. So I would say, but those things happening to me, to answer your question,
Mm.
they frustrated me, they upset me. Early on in my career, I did find myself going, did I do something wrong there?
Mm.
As you get older and you see the pattern of how an organization tolerates behavior to other people and
Mhm.
yourself, it makes it becomes an interesting question of the battles you want to fight.
Yeah. Pick and
Um,
choose.
and I will say that you are what you tolerate. So an
Mhm.
organization that is aware, the decision makers are aware of certain behaviors and tolerate them, even if you're not at the receiving end of that behavior, it tells you a lot about what the organization is. But it
Mm.
ties back to what I was saying earlier, that um, I would say it's not necessarily yours to change that organization. It's
Yeah.
yours to do the best work you can in the
And
place that values you.
mhm.
Having to explain to people that you deserve air to breathe, or you deserve to be respected, or you deserve to be that's
Yeah.
nonsense battle. So I would say the main thing is knowing how to articulate your value, knowing how to look for the next thing, so that if something like that happens to you or someone else, and you're like, this place is not for me, you know how to look for the next thing.
Mhm. Okay. Would you say, like, during obviously, you've been through quite a few different battles whilst you've been in like the workplace, like, was there ever a particular person who kind of helped you through that? Any kind of female role models who you were able to maybe discuss this with, or?
Um, so when I was younger, I found that, as I said, when small things happen to you, so when
Mm.
people talk over you, or people um, ask you to take minutes, even though it's your meeting and your work, or people make a highly inappropriate remark about your appearance, or someone calls you sweetie in a meeting. That
Oh
has happened.
no.
Yeah, they lived, surprisingly enough, but I was made my displeasure very, very clear. Uh, when those things happen to you in your 20s, particularly for me at the time, and it could be the time and it could be me as well, right? It was very difficult at first to be able to say, that's not on me, mate, that's on
Mm.
you. And there were mentors and role models inside the organization. But it took a lot of courage to have the first conversation, to
Okay.
go up to someone and say, this happened to me. Please tell me whether I'm reading the situation wrong and what I should be doing differently. And I must admit that those women at the time and since were absolutely brilliant in contextualizing how other people's bad behavior is not on you, but it is a transition, particularly when you're trying to build your career and prove yourself. And it usually comes from people who have power over you, right?
Yeah.
As things have moved on, and I have become the person who has more power in the organization with sort of age and experience, I found myself intervening much more when I see it happening to others,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
being extremely vocal about when things happen to me. Somebody was
Mm.
extremely disrespectful in a meeting not so long ago. And I could have laughed it off, but I actually stopped the meeting in its tracks. And I was like,
Really.
this is not acceptable behavior. And
Yeah.
for the benefit of everyone else in this meeting, I will take this to HR, because if you did this to me, you're doing it
Mm.
for other people. But it's also important for the people who are watching right now to know that when you disagree with someone, talking to them like that is not how you
Yeah. How you do it.
tackle disagreement
Mm.
in the workplace. And it's a very important process. Now, not very much happened, right? It went on that person's file,
Mm.
and that was it. Now, will that person do it again? I don't
Probably.
know. I would say probably as well.
Yeah. Like, so you saying, oh, nothing happened their file, or what would you suggest as an alternative? Like, what kind of things, if a company is seeing this happen within their team, what kind of other course of action would you recommend or maybe suggest for them to do?
Well, I firmly believe that you are what you tolerate.
Hmm.
And your shiny narratives and your corporate culture manifestos are only as good as the everyday behavior of working somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's all good and well saying, our core value is trusting our employees,
Mm.
but even the pencils are locked down, and to have an external USB drive, you need to have a thingy from God. I respect a company that says we trust our employees, but we've made some commitments to the regulators, and therefore these things are not permitted, not because we don't trust you, but because
Mhm.
uh, one bad apple is enough, right? And
Yeah.
there's transparency in that. It's not fluffy, but
Yeah.
but it's transparent.
Transparency. Yeah.
So I would say that the first thing is companies need to be comfortable with their identity, and if their identity is not great, then you fix the identity. You don't hide the thing. So to
Hmm.
your point, you are what you tolerate, and that's at an organizational level. It's not at an individual level.
Yeah.
If you are treated in a way that is not acceptable, if you're patronized, if you're dismissed,
Hmm.
and the organization is aware of that and
Hmm.
finding excuses. I mean, I was told when that particular person behaved badly that that was unacceptable, but that person was having some trouble at home.
Mm. Like trying to justify it.
Um, Now we are all human, right? But
Mm.
at the same time, you know when you know what an organization tolerates and what it doesn't. So I would say from an organizational perspective, don't tolerate the things that you don't want to be part of who you are, because that's
Yeah.
what defines you, not
Your
what you
USPs
say.
are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What you actually do on a daily basis and how you tolerate bad behavior. As an individual, you have to make an assessment of whether a culture um, suits you, and whether you
Mm.
believe you're getting enough out of your career there to continue fighting those fights.
Mm.
My friend Josh Winterson says that the way you do anything is the way you do everything,
Okay.
and I
I
find
like
that
that.
a very telling um, way of testing. So if you are the
Mm.
decision maker, you can't tolerate that kind of thing as
Yeah.
an exception, because it's not an exception. It colors the reality of particular people's behaviors.
Hmm. Of course. So it seems like obviously you've always been fairly vocal about things like this and kind of experiences you've had. Would you say there's like one career defying like moment for you, like that you're kind of proud of or that has brought upon like significant changes?
There've been a few career defining moments, but it's less about what I did in them and more about what happened. And for
Okay.
me, the one I talk about the most is is one that I had very little to do with, actually. So when I
Mm.
was at BNY Mellon, I transitioned, as I said, from an internal operations and IT role to doing client-facing work in ops and IT around revenue protection with a great team, still with the same boss, was like, I'll teach you stuff. And he did, right? He taught me so much
Everything.
about
Mm.
how banking works, how technology works. Absolutely incredible mentor, incredible boss.
Mm.
Um, and a great one for living and leading by principle as well, right?
Mhm.
So it was a great context. And then I moved away from his team to set up the innovation department, because it was like career progression, and I had a lot of support in the organization.
Mm.
But there was that little bit of a stumbling thing, because all of the minute you move from solving problems to creating new stuff, a lot of people are like, I'm busy enough with the stuff I have, I don't need more stuff.
Yeah.
And I found myself really running the danger of spinning my wheels
Oh,
or
right.
doing more of the same, because the thing is, I can do all sorts of things for you, but if you
Mm.
don't want them.
Yeah, then what can you do?
And I do remember the day that the first senior client executive said, let's see what you can do. And she opened that door. And if you had her on here, she'd be like, I didn't do anything. That wouldn't have happened anyway. I'm not stupid. I knew you were good and all that. And I believe
Mm.
it. However, A, she opened that bloody door.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing. She kept the training wheels on, but in a way that was not obvious to the client and didn't make
Okay.
me self-conscious. So she took me in to meet the C-level suite of 3 of her major clients and 3 of the bank's major clients. And we're talking 3 of the biggest banks in Europe, right?
Oh, wow.
I'm
Okay.
still a vice president at this point. I am like sleepless all night before because this is big.
Panicking.
But she helped me prepare the material. She helped prepare me. She helped contextualize. We walked into the meeting. She set the scene. She explained to them why I was here and what she was hoping we would get out of it. She padded the pieces where we may have had problems in the past or where she knew particular people had interests. And she, rather than throwing me into the deep blue sea, she created this space in which I could shine.
Okay.
But imagine the difference of I'll set up a meeting for you.
And you can go deal with it.
You can go deal with it and sink or swim.
Yeah.
And
So it's
I think it's important to acknowledge what opening a door for someone means. It's not well, I've given you an intro, now it's on you. It's actually a much more involved process. And if you do it well, it doesn't look like you're doing anything.
okay. It's just giving you the foundations and the tooling to be able to kind of
Yeah.
expand and grow, but without kind of just being like, here you go, like kind of do what you can and
Yeah.
hope for the best and hope that it sticks. Because I imagine if she wouldn't have gave you that help and that guidance, your career could have followed a completely different path to what it
Yeah,
has.
absolutely. Now, if you ask Adriana, her name's Adriana Chiarelli, if you ask Adriana, she'll say, maybe it was an accelerant,
Okay.
but she's firmly of the belief that my career would have been exactly the same because it's down to my ability and skills. And that's what makes her an amazing mentor. She doesn't feel she did anything important, but you and I both know that even if it was just an accelerant, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can be as hardworking and as smart as you like. Don't you think that there are millions of smart people that never got anywhere?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shame. But it seems like kind of throughout your career, you've always had these like, you've had good mentors, you've had people who have kind of been kind of rooting for you and kind of helped you throughout this. Unfortunately, like in tech, especially, a lot of women don't necessarily have this, and they don't have that support network. Like, what, like, would you say, we should be doing to encourage more women to kind of step out of their comfort zone and kind of
I would
go
say
for
go
it?
find the mentors. I didn't necessarily have those mentors structurally.
Okay.
I've had some very good bosses. I've had
Yeah.
some very good bosses. I've had some monumentally bad bosses as well. Like the sort of bad bosses that are so bad you wouldn't put them in a movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
Like
no.
I have some stories for you that you'd be like, oh my God, that's not real. And I've had some very indifferent bosses
Mm.
who would be excited if you succeeded, but you're on your own if you didn't. And they
Mm.
wouldn't stand in your way, but they wouldn't support you. And and everything in between, right? So I
Mm.
would say move away from bad bosses. That was advice that was given to a group of um, rising stars at BNY Mellon by Karen Peets, who was then the chair of the bank, right?
Okay.
You know what I expected? I had always liked her, but the minute she said that, I was like, "You legend! You actually said it. Move away from bad bosses. There is nothing that can help you there."
Okay.
But I would also say find those mentors, like Adriana Pierelli, who opened those doors for me, was not my boss.
Okay.
She was willing to help me. I absorbed that help like a sponge. She's still helping me, like 10 years on.
Mm.
Um, but I went to my bosses, the good ones, and said, I need a mentor.
Yeah.
Where do you think I need help? But I've also gone up to very senior people in my organization or other organizations, knocked on the door and said, there's this thing that you seem to be really good at and I'm shit
Can
at.
you help
Can
me?
you help me?
Yeah.
And people are open to that. Now you need to find someone whose personality suits you. You can have those conversations, but I'd say seek those people out because then you pay it forward, right? It's not about why would they help me. I have nothing to give them. They'll help you because someone helped them. And then
Yeah.
when you're in a position to, you'll help someone else.
Yeah. And that is actually something that, like, as the support her group that we're creating is looking to do. So we're building out a bit of a mentorship scheme with kind of mainly more technology focused, but like engineers who are kind of entering the space and want that guidance from someone who's been there and done that and kind of wears the t-shirt. So then they can pass on what they've learned and
Absolutely.
hopefully kind of pay it back. And I think, unfortunately, at the same as you don't necessarily have your boss who's going to be that great mentor for you. It's about going out and trying to find people, even from different companies or different kind of completely paths, but you kind of resonate on a bit of a level with. Um, so obviously, I'm conscious that you have something to join in a minute. If there was one kind of piece of information or kind of advice that you would give to anyone kind of looking to enter the sector or kind of dealing with some issues, like, what would that be?
I would say it's hard, but it's worth it.
Hmm.
I would say that the two best pieces of advice I was ever given were one, bring your whole self to work. It feels particularly scary when you're in a corporate, but it's really good advice. And the second piece of advice, and they were both from my BNY Mellon boss, was like, "You'll learn everything here, Randall." He always said, "Dance with the one who brung you." He said that in a Texan accent, which I can't do. Really good advice, which is the people who help you along the way,
Hmm.
don't leave them behind.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed how far that takes you.
Okay. I like that. Kind of being appreciative of those who've helped you and kind of not forgetting kind of who helped you along the way.
Right, that's right.
Perfect.
And it's worth saying right now that I am willing and able and available to have a
Hmm.
conversation with anyone who feels I can be of assistance to them.
Yeah.
I may not be able to be of assistance, but I may be able to point them in the right
Right
direction.
direction. Perfect. That's what we like to hear.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being patient. And
Thank you for coming.
and hopefully we can build a meaningful conversation as we go.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Leda.
Thank you so much.